What's up, everyone? Sam Shaw here, founder of Wall Street Mastermind. Excited to be back today with another client interview for you guys. Today, I'm excited to have Krishna on with us. Krishna just recently finished going through the summer 2023 recruiting process. It's early April right now as the time of this recording. And so she finished relatively quickly, and which she's happy about. But I wanted to get her to come on here and just talk to you guys about, her whole journey and going through the recruiting process, probably going all the way back to freshman year, and just how things have gone for her, and also just share some of her advice with you guys, so that you can also be more successful yourself. So, Krishna, I want to thank you for taking the time to be with us today. If you can, maybe just start with like a quick introduction of who you are, so our listeners can have a sense, and then I have some questions for you.
Yeah, for sure. Happy to be here. So I'm Krishna. I'm currently a sophomore at Duke University, majoring in economics with a finance concentration and minoring in computer science.
Awesome. Awesome. So, okay. So you go to Duke, you're a sophomore. Let's go back to like the beginning. So,
Mhm.
when did you like realize or decide that investment banking was something you wanted to pursue? Was this like
Mhm.
right when you got to college, or, a little bit later? Like, what would you say?
So I think it was probably like the spring semester of my freshman year.
Okay.
I joined Duke Investment Club, and that's where I really like got exposed to investment banking and also like alumni and upperclassmen who were doing banking. And I
Right.
just found it really interesting. So that's what got me really interested.
Okay. So discovered IB second semester of freshman year,
Hmm.
which I think that's like pretty common for a lot of people, because when you first
Yeah.
campus, you don't really know what banking is. And then you
Yeah.
start joining some clubs, you talk to upperclassmen,
Hmm.
a lot of like the probably smartest and most successful upperclassmen are all going to banking. So you're like, oh, what is this, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
So you discovered it second semester, and then like, what were some of the things that you started doing on your own, prior to joining Wall Street Management? Like once you realized like, oh, banking might be something I want to pursue, like what were some of the actions that you started taking?
Hmm. Yeah, well, after that, I really just started trying to figure out like the timeline because I mean, I had heard that it was like a little accelerated and that you recruited like sophomore spring for junior summer.
Yeah.
So I was trying to figure out like exactly how to navigate it, how exactly to be prepared for it.
Yeah.
I talked to like some alumni, a lot of upperclassmen mainly.
Yeah. Got it. Okay. So you spend time talking to people. You learned about the timeline, which is really important, by the way. Like for people that are new to recruiting, one of the first things that you should think about is the timeline. And I think a lot of people don't do this.
Hmm.
And even then, like you said, I think what you were told was that you'll have to recruit by sophomore spring, and it turned out that it actually was more like sophomore fall, right?
Yeah.
Because we're in spring now, and I mean, like a lot of things are already well underway, and applications have been open for months.
Hmm.
Um, so fast forward a little bit.
Hmm.
I think you joined Wall Street Mastermind like July, like basically during the
Yeah.
summer
July.
between your freshman and sophomore year, right?
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
like, what made you want to join something like Wall Street Mastermind? Because, and the reason why I ask is because I think a lot of our audience, they have the same questions, like, hey, like, most of the people that that got into banking, probably weren't in Wall Street Management, because we've only been around for
Hmm.
not that long, like 4 years, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Hmm.
so, like, what made you want to take this route as opposed to maybe just like doing it yourself or whatever?
Yeah, I think a big like factor for me was I was like really concerned that I wouldn't be able to like, be prepared for like the interviews, especially like the behavioral and technical portions like on my own,
Mm.
just because I felt like if I didn't have like the structured modules that Sam provides, I wouldn't be taking the time out of my day during the semester to like actually like hit the books. But
Mm.
like having something that's like already structured and ready to go is so easy because like I'll be like, okay, I have to like study this subject for 1 hour, and then I'm like, okay, let me go and study some technicals, or let me go like work on my behaviorals. So that was something that was really appealing to me. And the other part of it was the networking. Like I didn't know how to network. I don't know if I really do know how to network still, but like just the networking and the whole application module was just really helpful, and it was something that I was concerned about coming in.
Yeah.
So just talking to you and just hearing like the resources that you could provide was just something that I really was looking for.
Got it. So essentially, I think if I'm hearing you correctly, it's like you almost just treated Wall Street Mastermind as like an additional elective that you're taking in school almost. And it's just like, yeah, I'm signing up for this class. It's going to teach me everything I need to know to get the job that I want, which kind of is the whole point of going to college anyway, is to get the job that you want. But what you're learning in this class is maybe like a lot of skills that, quite frankly, they don't teach in school. Like your school doesn't really teach you how to network, for example, even though it's such an important skill in the professional world. And then like some of the stuff that you need to learn in terms of like interviewing skills, quite frankly, there aren't really classes that teach you how to interview either. I mean, you can take like finance classes and stuff at school, but a lot of the classes that you probably wouldn't need to pass the technical interviews, you might not be able to take them until you're like a junior or senior. And at that point, it's too late for recruiting. Right?
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah. I think the other thing is, like I already knew that, you know, I mean, Duke has such a strong alumni network, but I guess my like sticking point was like, I didn't know how to like reach out and like make those alumni like connections that would, you know, vouch for me in the process.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like everyone, especially if you go to a target school, like all the other students in your year who are basically like your most direct competition, so to speak, like everyone has access to the same alumni, right? But it's not about having access. It's more about how do you stand out amongst all the people that are reaching out to the same people. And at the end of the day, these alumni aren't going to just like help everyone or refer every single person. Like they're going to be very selective about who they like the most, right?
Exactly.
And so that's like a skill that has to be learned. So that makes sense. So then I guess you joined Wall Street Mastermind in July, and then so you finished recruiting like end of March, I guess, right? Late March-ish. So that was like I'm gonna say like 8-month process, right? So like talk to us about the past 8 months. Like what has that been like for you going through the recruiting process? How hard was it? And also like what were some of the things that you worked on inside of Wall Street Mastermind? Like what did you find to be most helpful? Like give people a sense of what it's like to go through the recruiting process inside of our program.
Yeah. So in the past 8 months, I recruited for both my sophomore summer and my junior summer. And Wall Street Mastermind ended up helping out for both actually a lot, because I mean, just having like people to go to ask questions like, hey, I'm interviewing with like a PE firm for this summer. Like, what exactly is PE? But like, everyone's here to answer your questions. On the inside Wall Street Mastermind specifically, I think the thing that has the most like impact for me personally was filling out the behavioral questionnaire, because I don't think it can be like overstated like enough or emphasized enough how important behaviorals are. Like technicals, I mean, they're not going to make your interview, they could break it, but behaviorals are so important. And I know that like if I didn't have Wall Street Mastermind, I didn't have like the questionnaire, and I didn't have to like, I wasn't like had to like actually fill it out and answer every question and think about how I wanted to answer every question, I never would have done it on my own. And like I wouldn't have been like ready for the questions, like the offhand questions that interviewers want to ask me that aren't on the questionnaire. But like going through the process of doing it, like you understand like what you want to say, you understand how to say it concisely, and you also like just formulate and refine like your stories that you want to like showcase the qualities that are most important for investment banking.
Right. I mean, it's really about, I think what you're saying is like you're preparing answers for the most commonly asked questions, of course, but more importantly, even for the questions that you didn't explicitly prepare for, you've learned the framework for how to answer questions in general. And so that allows you to like think on the fly and just still be able to give a good, concise and coherent answer, even if it's kind of like a curveball question.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. I think also like the point that you're making, which is like it's something that most students especially don't really realize until they're on the other
Hmm.
side, like you are now, is
Hmm.
that
Yeah.
how important the behavioral interview is. Because I think like there's so much emphasis placed on like just knowing your technicals. And I
Hmm.
think like part of the reason for that is that their entire like investment banking recruiting prep industry, I'll call it that. It's like,
Hmm.
I mean, we're a part of that. Wall Street Mastermind is a part of that, right? But like
Hmm.
Wall Street Oasis, Breaking into Wall Street Prep, like, all the big companies that are out there that provide, that sells, products and services to help with recruiting, like so much, like the majority of the products that are out there are
Hmm.
centered around teaching you how to answer technical questions,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
And I think there's a reason for that, which is learning technicals is actually it's more black and white. It's like you either know the concepts or you don't. And so like
Hmm.
it's a lot easier to have products and services built around that, because
Yeah.
it's not as manual. It can be one size fits all. Like teaching you how to do a DCF is the same as teaching the next person how to do a DCF, right?
Hmm.
So that's like a business model decision. But in
Hmm.
reality, and so like when they're doing the marketing, they have to like, they put all the emphasis around like, yeah, you should learn how to build a financial model, for example, right? In reality, like
Hmm.
having gone through as many interviews as you have you ever been asked to build a financial model in an interview?
Never. Not once.
Yeah, never, right? And so it's just like, I think a lot of people don't realize it's like sometimes like what's actually like the most important thing to focus on is not necessarily like the thing that people are trying to sell you.
Hmm. Yeah.
Because to do what we do, and for example, like you filling out a questionnaire with all of your answers, like our coach isn't going through and like
Hmm.
manually editing everything by hand and then like doing
Hmm.
iterations on that, like that's very labor intensive, right?
Yeah.
Which is, and
Hmm.
it's less scalable, which is why a lot of these other companies choose not to do it, right? But
Hmm.
actually, like when you think about what you just said, and I 100% agree with this, your technical interview could break you. Like if you don't know your stuff, like obviously
Hmm.
you're eliminated. But
Hmm.
it's almost never the thing that makes you. Like because
Hmm.
if you know your technicals, all of your competition, they all know how to answer technical questions too. So like
Hmm.
that's really not the thing that sets you apart, right? The thing that actually
Yeah.
sets you apart is that your story is so much better than the next person's, right?
Hmm.
And because everyone's behavior answers are actually different, right? And
Yeah.
actually, like, I mean, I just had a client who just like heard back from an interview, and she actually like she nailed the technical interview. Like literally her technical interviewer told her at the end of the interview, like, yeah, great job, whatever. So she was
Hmm.
feeling good about it. And
Hmm.
then she ended up not getting the offer
Yeah.
from Bulge Bracket Bank. And so she reached out to one of her interviewers and asked for feedback. And it turned out that like they wanted her behavior answers to be a little bit better, right?
Hmm.
So now we're gonna go back and like iterate on those behavior answers again. But my point is,
Hmm.
you can nail all your technicals and you might still not get the job, right?
Yeah.
Your behaviors aren't good
Hmm.
enough. And going back to your networking point, before you can even get the interview, you need people to refer you. And to get people to
Hmm.
refer you, you need to have good stories. Like most
Hmm.
most of your networking conversations, I mean, like, were they asking you behavioral questions or technical questions?
Behavioral.
Yeah, it's like almost 100% behavioral, right? I mean, like
Hmm.
once in a while you might run into like a banker who's kind of hardcore and they start grilling you on technicals when it's supposed to be a networking call, but like that's pretty rare, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
So I mean, for all of these reasons, like the behavior is just so important. But I think also the
So
other thing
important.
that I think like you're a bit unique in that you actually had the self-awareness to be like, hey, I really need help on the behavioral side, right? I feel like
Hmm.
that's what you're saying is like coming in, one of the reasons is like you wanted to work on your behavioral answers, but like what we see a lot with students is that, again, because we were mostly worried about the technicals, because it's very obvious when you don't know your technicals, right? And so people can
Hmm.
feel
Yeah.
that, but it's not as obvious when your behavioral answers aren't good, right?
Hmm.
And so
Yeah.
most people feel like, oh, my behavioral answers are pretty good already. Like,
Hmm.
I know how to talk about myself. I know how to like,
Yeah.
so, walk through my resume, like what's the big deal? Uh,
Hmm.
but like, like kind of, if you can share with people, like you had your, whatever your answers were initially when you came in, right? Or even
Hmm.
after you came in, you
Hmm.
had like whatever the first draft of your answers were. Obviously, when you
Hmm.
put together that draft, that
Hmm.
was like, those are the best answers you could come up with at the time,
Hmm. Yeah.
right? Compare that to like the final version of your answers that you ended up using. Like, was there a significant difference? Or, and like, if so,
Hmm.
like, what would you say were the differences? Or were they pretty similar? I don't know.
Yeah, no, I mean, they were not similar. I think one of the biggest things that I ended up working on a lot was my story, which is very important. What I thought was like important on my resume, on my background, wasn't really, well, I guess what was necessary for like banking exactly.
Mm,
So, working on that, refining that exactly, being able to talk a little bit more about my background, which is what makes me unique amongst like other candidates, was like something that I had to work on. And then also a lot of like the tell me about it times, where you use like the Spark background layout.
yeah.
It was just I rewrote a couple of those couple of times just because the stories that I was saying, I guess just weren't like good answers. But having that actual feedback and be like, hey, like this doesn't make sense, or like, but why does this address like the question that's being asked, was
Yeah.
just really good because it made me like actually dig into my own experiences and find good examples that answer those questions and then also articulate them well.
Okay. Yeah. So I think you hit on like the two main challenges, whether people realize it or not. But the two main challenges with having a good behavioral answer is like, one, picking the right examples.
Hmm.
Right? So a lot of times people will just like pick whatever example they have, but then like they don't have the feedback from someone who actually knows what these bankers are looking for,
Hmm.
whether that example is good or not. Right. I think like the
Hmm.
most the most common example of that is when like bankers ask like, hey, what's your greatest weakness? And a lot of
Hmm.
people choose like very bad examples for what they
Yeah.
weakness, right? So that's like the first challenge is like making sure you're choosing the right thing to talk about. And
Hmm.
then the second thing, like you said, is like how do you deliver in like a succinct and concise way that's like
Hmm.
coherent and well organized. And that I think comes down to like the structure of your answers, which you mentioned the Spark outline, which is like one of the frameworks that we use, but it's all about like sticking to frameworks that are proven and have been known to work. And when you follow these frameworks, your answers are just very, very organized, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
Uh, and so I think if you have the right example and you have a good structure for it, then like you marry those two things and it's hard to not have a good answer at that point,
Yeah.
right? But I feel like people
Hmm.
usually mess up on like one or the other. And then like when it comes to like
Hmm.
structuring the answer, also is like, how do you know what the right structure is?
Right.
The way that we figured it out was honestly just through a lot of trial and error, right? Like
Hmm.
from having done this hundreds of times and seeing like which clients ended up with what offers, who was successful, who was not, and what do all the successful answers have in common. And that gives us clues on like, oh, these are like the things that the bankers typically are looking for, right? So
Hmm.
I think
Yeah.
having access to that type of like data is really really beneficial.
Hmm. For sure.
Yeah. Um, Okay, so behavioral questionnaire was like the most important thing. I guess the other thing you had mentioned was just like you didn't know how to network. So like
Hmm.
what happened after you joined the program? I mean, in terms of networking, you probably ended up doing a ton of it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you track like how many bankers you ended up reaching out to or having conversations with and stuff like that?
Um, I can't recall the number off the top of my head. It was a lot. It was
Yeah.
probably like 100.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest thing that changed after I joined was like I knew how to like first of all do the initial outreach, right? Because you give us like the examples of the emails that we can use. Um, like I didn't know the little thing about like personalizing it, like finding a similarity and like including that in the email in order to like help get a response from the banker.
Yeah.
Um, that was really great. And then I think the whole thing about like helping us understand that you're gonna have to reach out to a lot of people to even get like a threshold number of responses. Like I
Yeah.
feel like a lot of people don't quite understand that like you're gonna email people like one or two, three, four times, and they're not gonna respond to you, and that's that. But
Yeah.
like you have to like target a lot of people because like out of 10, maybe one will reply to you. And that one could be like everything that you need if you have like a good conversation, if you have a good story and like, a good reason that you want to do banking, which is something that the program helps develop as well.
Right. Which then like ties back to the behavioral stuff that you were talking about.
Behavioral. Mhm.
But I guess to your point on the networking side, it's like it's almost like there's this whole song and dance that you have to do with the bankers to like
Mhm.
get them to agree to talk to you in the first place, even though they don't know who you are. And then like
Mhm.
some of them will agree, some of them won't. And then like the ones who do agree, now you have this like 20 to 30 minute window of opportunity to like really win them
Mhm.
over. And like, what do you do during that time to like win them over, basically? And it's like in the end, it's all a numbers game, as in like how well can you convert, right? And then like
Mhm.
the higher your conversion rate, the less people you need to reach out to and talk to get to
Mhm.
like the ultimately what you're after is like the referral, right?
Right. Mhm.
Got it. Okay. That's great. And then like obviously, you also recruited for sophomore summer, right? So
Mhm.
what did you end up, or I guess your sophomore summer is really coming up still, but what will
Mhm.
you be doing for your sophomore summer?
Yeah, so I'm doing Girls Who Invest this upcoming summer. So for the month of June, I'll be learning about like investment management at Wharton, and then for July and August, I'll be interning at Third Point, which is a hedge fund.
Got it. Okay. Well, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's a really good opportunity. Um, and so you'll do that this summer, and then
Mhm.
what about like the following summer then for your junior summer, which was like the one that really counted? So you got a couple different offers, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
So I accepted an offer from Guggenheim for investment banking, M&A
okay,
advisory. It was a generalist offer,
got it.
and I had offers from Jefferies and Citi GCM as well.
Got it. Okay. How did you end up like, so those are all three offers are great offers, obviously, right?
Mhm.
How did you end up choosing Guggenheim over the other two? Like, what was kind of like the thought process behind, why you went with, I mean, Guggenheim's an elite boutique, so obviously a great firm. Citi, bulge bracket bank,
Mhm.
Jefferies, I guess, technically more a middle market bank, but I would say they're probably like the best middle market bank out there, right? And so like all really good options, like, and you probably would have gotten more offers if you kept recruiting, but it's so early. But like, how did you go about the decision making process?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, I talked to you a lot about like what I wanted to do.
Yeah,
I also asked some of my mentors that like I found throughout like the networking process, who just acted as sounding boards for me. And I think in the end, um, I just like I connected better with people at Guggenheim.
mm,
So the people at Guggenheim were like a big factor in me going there because I think there was a lot of initial and active outreach from current bankers at Guggenheim to me. Like after I accepted the offer, like I got congrats from a bunch of people that like I didn't interact with before at all.
mm,
Um, which I mean, it wasn't the case with like Jeffries or Citi, but I just felt like better connected there. So that's
yeah.
why.
It made you feel more wanted, which is important.
Yeah.
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 I mean, like, and I know we talked about this too, and I have my own opinions, but I do think that out of the three, I do think that Guggenheim is the best opportunity anyway.
Hmm.
Like regardless of, I don't know the people at all, right? So like that's
Hmm.
not even like factored in my consideration, but I just think that in terms of the deal experience that you get, um,
Hmm.
in terms of like the technical skills you'll develop, I just like typically at elite boutiques, you just get a bit more of a technical experience, and I
Hmm.
think like who knows what you want to do after banking, or maybe you stay in banking, but like
Hmm.
if you ever decide you want to go to the buy side, I also think it sets you up better for that. And so I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of things to, I think there's a lot of things that Guggenheim has going for it. In this,
Yeah, no, I agree.
yeah, that's great. I mean, did you see any like differences in terms of like the interviews? Like a lot of people say like the elite boutique interviews tend to be more technical. Did you find that to be true since you did interview with like all
Mm,
these different types of banks?
Um, so I for Jefferies and Guggenheim, I was like a diversity candidate.
Mhm.
So for Jefferies, I like got asked one technical question and it was just like walk me through a DCF.
Okay.
Um, but for Guggenheim, it was like a super day that like they would give to like normal general candidates. It wasn't like because you're diversity, it's easier for you, which is like sometimes how it is at some banks.
Yeah.
So I think I got like pretty well, what I thought was pretty typical technical questions. I didn't think it was like harder than like a bulge bracket exactly, but I
Yeah.
do know that like they dug a little deeper into your fundamental understanding versus like, just like walking you through like the steps of a DCF or a leverage buyout. They asked for like a little bit more fundamental understanding just from the
Mhm.
questions.
What's like an example of that? Like when you say a bit more fundamental understanding, like what's an example? Like what would they ask?
Mhm. So like there was this one question at my Guggenheim interview that I got wrong, but I still got the offer, guys. So I believe in y'all. So it was like when you're calculating the cost of debt in for WAC and a DCF, would you use like debt that the company has outstanding that they issued like 10 years ago? And then why or why not? I mean, so cost of debt is like the interest rate on the debt that like the company has, or you like get it from like a comparables analysis. But like
Yeah.
on a question like that, you have to know that like the like what goes into cost of debt and interest rates is the current environment around you, right?
Right.
Like the market environment.
Right.
So the environment 10 years ago was not the same as the environment right now. Therefore, when you're trying to calculate the future value of a company, you don't
Right.
really want to use that 10-year outstanding bond.
Yeah, you should be. It's more about like if they had to borrow money today, what would they get charged by their lenders, right?
Yeah.
In the current market environment. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a good question, and you're
Mhm.
right. It is more nuanced and not really something that you see in the guides, to be
Yeah.
honest.
Yeah.
And so for people that are just like purely memorizing the guides, then they probably wouldn't know the answer to that. But
Yeah.
okay, so you didn't get that one, but you still got the offer in the end. And I guess that
Yeah.
kind of goes to show your point previously, which is that if your stories are good enough and if they like you enough, they're willing to
Hmm.
let the like small mistakes on a technical side. I mean, you still have to do a
Hmm.
respectable job, obviously, but like
Yeah.
that's not like the end all be all, basically.
Yeah. No, for sure. Mhm.
Yeah. Because from their perspective, like the technical stuff, like that can all be learned. Like they can teach you that stuff in
Mhm.
the job, right? So it's
Yeah.
like what they can't really change is like who you are as a person. And I think that's a lot more important. So
Yeah.
um awesome. So obviously, look, I mean, three offers, that's great. Like, I mean, a lot of people are happy to just have one. So it's good to have options.
Yeah.
I guess like one last question for you. Like,
Mhm.
do you have what's like one piece of advice? If I ask you like give your best advice to people who are maybe going through the process now, or maybe people who are like freshmen still, like you were, they
Mhm.
just discovered they wanted to do banking. Like in hindsight, knowing what you know now, like what's something that you feel like would have been really helpful for you if you had known this back then? Or like even like a piece of advice that someone gave you along the way that just like
Mhm.
was really helpful for you.
Yeah. So, okay. So a piece of advice that I would give would be to just put in the work. It's hard during recruiting, especially when you get like multiple rejections, like, to keep like practicing your behaviorals, to keep reviewing your technicals, but really like refining your behaviorals, really like understanding what goes into like a discounted cash flow or a leverage buyout will help you in the long run, even if like maybe you're like not getting the first couple of offers that you like really want.
Yeah.
So just think of it as like you're putting in a lot of work in like the short term so that like in the long term, you like have an internship and then hopefully that converts into a full-time job. So just keep at it and put in the work. And then I think the best piece of advice that someone else gave me, it was also along the lines of like, put in the work, but it was also don't be discouraged. Like odds are things are going to work out for you. So like, don't let like the first couple of rejections really like weigh you down, and like, don't let the doubts like get to you and be like, I can't do it, because I guarantee you, like, if you put in the work, you'll be able to do it.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. I mean, I was just telling someone about this, but I think the norm when it comes to investment banking recruiting is that the vast majority of candidates will experience rejection at some point. Like, I've coached hundreds of clients, and there might be more than this, but like at least off the top of my head, I can only think of one person that got every single interview he applied for and passed every single interview he went to, got invited to every single super day, and got every single offer for like all the super days that he went to. It's like, so he had like a, perfect batting average, but like, I can think of one person out of like hundreds. And so it's just like, that's the exception, not the rule. Right. And I think a lot of times people get discouraged too easily, because if you get rejected 2 or 3 times, it's like, oh, people telling you that you're not good enough, but that's how it's interpreted. And you're like, oh, maybe I'm not cut out for this. Okay, let me go like do something else. Right. But I think that's why it's like only the people that are like super committed to getting this job, and like if your reason for wanting to do this is strong enough, then you won't give up so easily. Right. And every mistake that you make, or every interview that you get rejected from, it's only a failure if you let it be a failure. You can also turn into a win where you learn from it, you know what you did wrong, and then like the next time you have another interview, you don't make the same mistake again. So in a sense, like it's okay to fall, but you want to make sure you're falling forward, right?
Yeah, no, that's a big thing that I think a lot of people don't consider. Even like from like your earlier interviews, there's always something you can learn.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Awesome. Well, that's really great advice. Guys, for those of you that are, still listening to this, if you're just starting out in your investment banking recruiting journey right now, or maybe you're in the midst of going through it, you're in the thick of it, and you're wanting to get some extra help, whether it's with, your interviewing skills, your networking, building up your resume, even maybe you need more relevant experience, whatever it may be. I want to encourage you guys to, reach out to us and see if we can help. We can't always help every single person that reaches out, and to work with us, you do have to apply. It's by application only. But if we feel confident that we can get you the job, we'll invite you into our program. We even have an option for a money back guarantee. Like, we have to be that confident enough to offer you a guarantee to invite you into our program. And if we aren't confident, we'll tell you that. And we're not going to lie to you, because it just doesn't do anyone any good. But at a minimum, we'll always give you just some advice on what we think we would do in your shoes, regardless of whether you work with us or not. So if that's something that you guys are interested in, you can go and apply at www.wallstreetmastermind.com/apply. The street is abbreviated to ST, so it's stmastermind.com/apply. And just book a time on our calendar, fill out a short application so that we have your information, and, hop on a call. We'll ask you about your situation, learn about what it is that you're trying to accomplish, and also what challenges you feel like you're currently having and need help with. And depending on what you tell us, if we can help you, we'll be happy to talk through what that might look like. Okay. So I think with that said, Krishna, I want to thank you for taking the time to talk to us today and just share your experience. I think it's really helpful for other people. Obviously, you had an amazing outcome with 3 offers, and super happy for you. I think Guggenheim is a great firm, and I think you're gonna have a great experience there over the summer. And can't wait to see what else you're able to accomplish going forward.
Yeah, thank you so much for the help, and I'm really excited.
Yeah, no, it was an honor to play a small part in your journey. So guys, we're gonna wrap it up here. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll be back with more of these in the near future for you guys, especially as more and more of our clients wrap up their summer 2023 recruiting process. Okay, so stay tuned. But until next time, thanks for tuning in. Bye.